In this video, we're going to be learning how to log a user in with the Facebook API using PHP. I'm going to show you guys how to add a login with Facebook button on your login page, and when the user clicks login with Facebook, they will be taken to Facebook and be prompted with a dialog box to accept your app. When they click the continue button, they'll be redirected back to our website and logged in. Now, since I authenticated with my app and I log out and I come back to my website, this time when I click login with Facebook, I will be automatically logged in. When I clicked on that button, the user did go to Facebook, but Facebook saw they had already authenticated with my app, so they sent them right back to my website. We are also going to save the user's ID and their access token in our users table. If the user happens to log in and authenticate with Facebook and they don't exist in here, a row will be inserted with the email we get from Facebook, the first and the last name that we get from Facebook, and the user ID and the access token that we get back from Facebook. And that is what we're going to learn in this video. Before we start coding, all of this code is on GitHub, github.com/jstolpe/easycodeiz. The website is also live at easycodeiz.com. If you want to watch any previous video tutorials on this website, you can go check out my YouTube channel. I have an Easy Code Is playlist. Now we can dive in. Before we start coding anything, we need to create ourselves a Facebook app. You want to click on the My Apps dropdown and you want to click Create App button. Enter the name for your app and click the Create App ID. The page will refresh and you'll be brought to your app dashboard. The first thing you want to set up is the Facebook login product. Click on the products, find the Facebook login. I already have it set up, so it's not on my list. Once you click the setup button, it will then appear over here in your left-hand bar. Now, your Facebook login is set up and we can use this app to log a user in through Facebook API. I will be coding this video on localhost. However, if you are going to put your code on a live web server, you need to head over to the settings here and enter your redirect URI to the valid OAuth redirect URIs section. When I push this code live, easycodeiz.com, I'm going to have it redirect to the login.php file. This is where the user gets redirected to once they click the continue button in the Facebook dialog pop-up. But since we are in development mode here with my app, localhost will work. When it's live, I have to have it in live mode. Now that our app has been set up, we can start coding. For my easy code is set up, my repository is checked out into my www directory. Outside of my repository is where I store my credentials. I'm going to go up 2 levels into my easy code is includes folder. Here I'm going to open up my config.php file. Right now, all I have stored in here is my database credentials. The reason this config file is outside of the repository is because this is where we want to store credentials that we don't want in the repository or we don't want in our web root. So we do an include of this config.php file in our autoloader, include once on our config.php file. And this will tell you how to set it up if you're checking out the repository for the first time. And the credentials we are going to store in here are our Facebook credentials. This way I don't risk accidentally committing them to the repository, and I can easily change them based on the server that the code is running on. We're going to add 3 new creds here: Facebook App ID, Facebook App Secret, and the FB Redirect URI. We're going to get our app ID and our app secret from our dashboard. Back in Facebook, in the left-hand bar, click Settings, Basic. We're going to copy our app ID, paste that right here. Then we're going to show our app secret and copy that. Save that in our fb_app_secret. And the last thing I'm going to define is my redirect URI. So when I'm running this on my local box and I click Login, I'll go to Facebook. It'll ask me if I want to continue with the app. When I click Continue, Facebook will send the user back to this URI right here. Those are the only new defines we're adding to our config file. Now we have access to our app ID, secret, and redirect URI throughout the code. We're done with our config file and we can close it. Now I'm going to move on to my login.php file. First thing I want to do is make a login button. Under our current login button, we're going to make another section, and this section is going to be the OR section. Now we have an OR. Underneath there, we're going to place our button. Create another section, create ourselves an A tag. There's our login with Facebook button. Now we're just going to apply some styles to it. I'm going to open up my global.css. We're going to have our A tag here, class A-FB. We don't want any text decoration on that one. I'm going to put a style on my FB button container. This is where we want to make it look like Facebook. Give it a padding of 10 pixels, get some white text, border radius of 5 pixels to match our other buttons. And then we want to give it a background, which is that color. And when we hover on it, we want it to go a little bit darker. Give it that hover effect. Give the user some validation that they're actually hovering over it. Now my login page has a nice login with Facebook button, except we want it underneath that or. There. And now we have a nice looking login with Facebook button on our login page. Now we need to generate the URL that the user goes to when they're going to click on this button. Back in my easy code is folder, in my PHP folder, I'm going to create a new file called Facebook_API. This is going to hold all of the functions we're going to use to talk to the Facebook API. The first function in here is going to be our get Facebook login URL. This is where we will return a string that we will place inside of our href here that will direct the user to Facebook and prompt them with the dialog login. Our endpoint looks like this. So to create this string, start with the endpoint. This is going to be everything up until the question mark. The only variable in here is the FB graph API version. I'll make a define for this graph version. Over in my autoloader, I'll make a few defines right here for Facebook. This one's going to be the graph version, and the version we're on is 6.0. We want to also define graph domain. Since the domain is the same for a lot of these endpoints, we'll put that in this define. That makes it easy to change in the future if we ever need to. And the last thing we're going to define is our app state. We're just going to call this ECI PHP. This will be sent to Facebook when the user logs in, and Facebook will send us value back. That way we know that the user is coming from Facebook. So the dialog/OAuth endpoint is where we will send the user. Then we have to send along the params. It's going to be an array keyed by each of the URL variables. First key is the client ID, FB app ID, set in our config file. After our client ID, we want to send along the redirect URI, also from our config file. After our redirect URI, we have our state, which we just defined in our autoloader, and then we have our scope. This is a comma-separated string of permissions you wish to request from the user. I'm just going to be requesting their email address. When the dialog pops up, it's going to say this app is requesting access to your email address. Then the auth type, this is going to be re-request in case they deny our app. When they click the login button again, they will then be prompted again to authenticate with our app. Now we just have to build our endpoint and return it. Return endpoint. We're going to use HTTP build query on our params array to easily make this array look like all these variables right after the question mark. Now we have ourselves a login URL. Since this is a new file, I'm going to add it to my autoloader. I'm going to include my php/facebook_api.php file. Now on our login page, all we have to do is echo out that function. Now when I refresh my page, hover over my link, in the corner I can see it is sending me to the link that we just built in that function. Click on it, it should take me to Facebook. I see the pop-up. If I click edit this, we can see that the email request, that's the scope, is here for me to enable or disable. We'll leave it enabled and we will click continue. We should be redirected back to our login page. The difference now is that we have a code in the URL. And at the very end, we should see our state, which Facebook passed back to us as well. Now we have to write a function that will take that code and exchange it for an access token. In my Facebook_API file, I'm going to create a getAccessToken with code function. And the parameter we're going to be needing is the code from the URL. Here's what our endpoint looks like for this function. For this endpoint, we need to actually make a GET request. We're going to build the endpoint in the same way and the parameters as well. Start with our endpoint. The endpoint here is OAuth/AccessToken. Place our graph version with our define there, and our endpoint is set up. Now we can add the params. Client ID, client secret, redirect URI is required again, and the last thing that we want is to pass along the code that we got back from Facebook in our URL string. Since we can't just return a string here, we're going to create a new function called makeFacebookAPI call. In that function, we're going to pass along the endpoint and the parameters. I'm going to place this function at the top of my file. First parameter is the endpoint, second parameter is the params. This function is going to be making the actual API call, and we're going to do that using curl. First curl option we're going to set is our endpoint with the parameters. Here we want to pass in the endpoint with the parameters, just like we built this string here with our parameters array. That's all we need to do here. That is the GET request. And add on a few more curl options, and we can make our call. This executes the call and gets our response back. With our response, we want to JSON decode it. And last but not least, close the curl call. Now that we have all of our data in our FB response, we're going to pass back in this array the endpoint, the parameters, if there was any errors in the response, and of course the actual response itself. These three are obvious. We got the endpoint, params, and the response itself. If we have errors, we want to set this flag to true. If we don't, we want to set it to false. To check if there are any errors, we're going to look at our response, and we're going to see if there is an array key error set. If there is, we know there were errors. Otherwise, there were no errors. Then we can use the same is set for our error message. For this time, it's not a Boolean. It is the array key error message inside the error array. If we don't have any error, we're just going to set this to an empty string. Now that we have our make API call function all set up, we're ready to test out our get access token with code function. I'm going to head over to my login. If code's in the URL, then we're going to get ourselves an access token. And we're just going to print it out and die just to make sure our code's actually working. Back in my browser here, where we still have the code from the first time we tried to log in, if I refresh this page, here is the return array that we just set up in our make Facebook API call function. Our endpoint that we hit, all of the parameters that we sent along, there were no errors, so there's no error message. Actual Facebook response, looks like we have ourselves an access token. We know our get access token with code function works. Since the codes are a one-time use, if I refresh this page, it's going to tell me that this authorization code has been used. If I delete this code, hit login with Facebook again, we will get a new access token. Since I already clicked continue once, I don't have to see that dialog box again. Facebook just redirects right back to my site with a new code, and we get an access token. Now that we know our get access token with code function works, we can edit this if statement, and instead of get code, we're going to say if is set get state and fb app state equals get state, then we know the user has just came from Facebook. In this case, we're going to actually try and log the user in. In this function, we're going to pass all of the get parameters that we got back from Facebook. Over here in our Facebook API file, I'm going to create that function. Parameter coming in will be our get array. This function is going to return an array, and the array is going to contain a status and a message for that status. I'm going to start out by assuming a status of fail. The first check we're going to do, we're going to check if Facebook set an error. This means we did not get a code back from Facebook, but instead we got an error. That error is also in the get array, and it is called error description, right from Facebook. Otherwise, we got a code back. That means we can call our get access token with code function. And the code is right in the get array. Our access token info contains the actual response that we got back from our make Facebook API call function, just like we dumped out on the page. There are a bunch of reasons why an access token could fail, so that's our first check here. We can call our has errors array key. Otherwise, we got ourselves an access token. In the case where we had an error, we're going to set our error message equal to access token info and our error message array key. If all went well, we can use that access token to get the user's info. So in our session, we're going to save our access token. In the FB response key, we have our access token. I want to save it to the session for use later. Then we can use that access token to try to get the user's info. We're going to create ourselves a new function called get Facebook user info. And all we need to pass in there is the access token. Underneath my get access token with code function, I'm going to create my get Facebook user info function. Parameter here is our access token. Our endpoint here looks like this. graph.facebook.com/me, that's the endpoint. Then we pass along fields. Fields is a comma separated string of what we want to get back. First name, last name, email, and profile picture. And then obviously our access token is needed. Let's get our endpoint defined first. Our endpoint is simply the graph domain/me. Next is the parameters. We just have fields and access token. Access token is the only parameter from the function, and the fields is a comma separated string, first name, last name, email, and picture. Now this is a GET request, so we have to return our make Facebook API call function, passing in our endpoint and those parameters. We're at a pretty good point here where we want to make sure that everything is working. I'm just going to print out and die right here the Facebook user info that we're getting back. We're going to try to log in again. Click on the button. We should come back to our site and see a Facebook response with my info, and we do. Facebook response contains my first name, last name, email, picture, and my Facebook ID. Perfect. Now that we got back to Facebook users info, we're going to do an if check. And this is where we're going to fall into if no errors have occurred. First check is FB user info has errors. If there's no errors from the FB user info, then we want to make sure that we have a Facebook ID and a Facebook email. Just in case there happens to be no errors, and for whatever reason we don't get a Facebook ID or email back, we do not want to fall into here. We need the ID and the email in order to look the user up on our end in our database. If our user info response has no errors and our Facebook response ID and our Facebook response email are not empty, meaning they both have values, we can set our status here to OK. We have an ID and an email that we can use to look up the user in our database. We're going to set another session variable right here where we're going to save the FB user info. This will all be saved to the session right here. Now we can start checking for the user and either logging them in or signing them up. First of all, we're going to do the easiest one, which is looking the user up by their Facebook ID. Here, we are going to call our getRow with column value. We're requesting from the users table where the FB user ID equals the user ID we got back in our response. This getRow with column value is over in my functions. We do our select from where and return ourselves the row. Before we can actually run that call, we need to add a few columns to our database, otherwise we're going to get some errors. My easy code is database. I'm going to click on the users table. I'm going to click on the structure, and we're going to add 2 fields to the end of the table. First one is going to be our FB user ID. Second one is our FB access token. Click Save. Now if we click the Browse button, we can see all of our users have empty FB user ID and FB access token. The first step we're on right now is looking for a user based off of the FB user ID. We're going to also want to try and get them by their email address. Get row with column value from users, but now we're looking for the email equaling the FB response email. Now we can do our logic around logging the user in or signing the user up. The easiest one is obviously the first one. If we have user info with ID, then we know the user has logged in with Facebook before, authenticated with our app, and so we can easily log them in. If this is not the case and we do not find the Facebook ID, we're going to check their email. First, we want to make sure that we actually got back a user with email. And if that user does not have a Facebook user ID, we know they have already signed up through our website on our sign up page. In this case, we are going to request that the user enter their password on our site in order to connect their Facebook account. The reason that we are going to require the user to enter their password on our site in order to connect their Facebook account is because the email address is editable through our website on your My Account page. In this case, I could have signed up with somebody else's email address. To log in, I would type in their email address and my password that I set up when I signed up. If they were to log in with Facebook and we automatically logged them in without asking them to connect their account and type in their password, they would log in unknowingly that somebody else had already signed up with that email address. We didn't find anybody with that ID or that email, so we can sign them up and log them in. In our first if statement, we're going to set the user ID, then we're going to update that user's row with the most recent access token that we just got. For this, we have to create ourselves an update row function. Pass in the table name, the column we want updated, the value for that column, and the ID of the row that we want updated. Over in my functions file, we're going to write an update row function. We're going to need to get ourselves a database connection from our get database connection function. Then we can write our statement. We have prepared our statement. Now we will create our params array. Update table name, set column, the column variable that came in here, equal to, now this should be value, makes more sense, set column equal to value, where ID equals ID. Our value gets replaced with our trim value, and our ID gets replaced with our trimmed ID. Then we just have to execute, and we do that by passing in our parameters. That is our update row function. Once we have updated our row, we're going to then get the user info again. This time we will get the row with the user ID, and it will have our updated access token in it. In order to log the user in, we have to set a few session variables. Is logged in is going to equal true, and we have to set our session user info. In our special case here, where we're going to ask them to log in, we're going to set their user ID. Then we're going to save the session that they need to do further authentication. So we'll give ourselves a nice long Boolean name like that and set it to true. At the beginning of this function, every time it gets called, we're going to want to start that out as false. Only in that special case are we going to set this to true. While we're at the top of this function, we're also going to want to clear out the access token. We're going to want to clear out the user info every time this function gets hit. So we clear it out and then we try to reset it down here. In this special case, this is all that is required for now. Then on the front end, we will tell them that they need to enter their password in order to connect the Facebook account. Last but not least, we're going to sign our user up because they were not found in the database. And we're going to pass all of the response info we got back for the user into our sign user up function. Currently our sign user up function is missing the 2 fields that we just added, so we're going to add those on. We've updated our prepare statement. Now we need to update our execute statement. Email, first name, last name, those are all the same as that we get back from a Facebook response, so we're good there. The password, we're not going to give the user a password if they're logging in through Facebook. Only if password is set are we going to want to give them a password. Otherwise, they get an empty password. Last but not least, the two new columns. We have to make sure these are actually set in because this function is called for our signup page as well, and that signup page does not have these values. Those values will just get an empty string because they're signing up on our site. We don't have an ID and a token to set them. When we do call this function and pass in the Facebook response, we will have an ID and an access token. Now we can sign the user up and we get back a user ID from this function, our ID that was just inserted into the database. So the FB user info does not actually contain an access token. Before we sign the user up, we want to add on an FB access token. We're setting that to our access token that we set in the session. Now when we call sign user up, our info array contains an FB access token. With that, we're going to get the user's info again, so we have their most updated info. And just like up here in our first if statement, now we can log them in. Then the page reloads, and because these are set, the site knows that the user is currently logged in. And that is our status OK. Otherwise, we're just going to say a message equal to invalid creds. This needs to be logged in, not logged ID. And we're going to default our message as well up here to an empty string. Now we're ready to test our login with Facebook. Over in my database, I don't have a user. When we log in with my Facebook account, it's going to log me in and sign me up. Looks like it worked. Refresh my database. Looks like my email's been entered. My first and last name have been saved from Facebook. And down here, my user ID and access token have also been stored. If I log out and I log back in with Facebook, it's going to log me back in, same user. It matched me on my Facebook user ID. Now for our special case where the user has signed up on our site with my email address, but I didn't sign up with Facebook. I signed up through our manual sign up process. If I did that, the row in our database would look like this. I would have an email, first, last name, and a password, and I would not have a user ID or an access token. In this case, when I click login with Facebook, Facebook will direct us back here, but we're going to want to catch them, fill in this email here, and give them a message telling them to enter your password in order to connect your Facebook account. To do that, we're going to display that message out right down here in our error message for our manual login form. What we're looking for here is our ECI login required to connect to Facebook. We're going to check if this is set, and if it is true, we're going to display out a div to the user and inform them on why they have to enter their password. An account already exists with that email address. To connect to your Facebook account, enter your password. Now that I've updated my row in the database to look like I signed up manually, if I log in with Facebook, Facebook is going to come back and it's going to say an account already exists with that email address. To connect to your Facebook account, enter your password. The other thing we want to do is we want to pre-fill the email address, this input right here. To pre-fill that, we're going to set the value equal to the email address if it exists. We're going to check the session for the FB user info email. If that is set, then we're going to echo it out. Otherwise, we don't pre-fill it with anything. Back on my website, if I try to log in again with Facebook, we have spit out that email address from Facebook into our email field. And all I have to do to connect my account now is enter my password. But before we enter our password, we have to update our process login script to save the user's Facebook ID and the most recent access token. If we have Facebook info in the session, we're going to update the users row with that Facebook user ID. And we're going to do the same for the access token. Back on my website, if I enter my password, click login, I have been logged in. If I refresh my page here, we should see an access token and an ID for me. Perfect. The last bit we need to add is an error message section here right above our login with Facebook button. As we saw, we can get Facebook errors. In our try and login with Facebook function, we return a status and a message. If that status equals fail, right here, we're going to echo out that message right here above the button. And if we are trying to manually log in, we need to clear out that error message. We have added a login button to our page. We have logged in with Facebook. If the user doesn't exist, we sign the user up. If the user already exists on our end, we're going to prompt them to enter their password for our account in order to connect their Facebook account. One last thing I'm going to show you guys is how to deny access to the app so you can see that pop-up again. Right now, if I click login, I go to Facebook, comes back, I don't see that pop-up. To see that pop-up again, go to your Facebook, go to settings. Under the apps and websites section, you will see the apps you have approved. Here's my Easy Code Is app. If I check on this and I click remove, done, now the app is gone from this list. If I try to log in again with Facebook, it's going to send me to Facebook, but now I have to re-authenticate this app. Click continue, and I will be logged in again. That is going to conclude this video of how to log in with the Facebook API using PHP. Thank you guys for watching. Hit that subscribe button, leave a like, leave a comment. Let me know what you want to see coded up next. I'll catch you later.